So we are back with a special edition of Game Time podcast because it's the Champions Trophy season and the Indian cricket team is playing all their matches in Dubai while the rest of the world is playing most of their matches in Pakistan. To talk about all of that, India's chances, whatever we've seen from India, what we've seen from our neighbors, Pakistan, and this hybrid model, we have with us Venkata Krishna B, who's currently in Dubai covering India's games, and we have Vinayakk Mohanarangan, who's in Noida, but he's been watching a fair bit of cricket, and this is me, Amit Kamath. Thank you for joining Game Time podcast, guys. Venkat, first, just want to come to you. What is this weird format that we call the hybrid model where one team gets to sit easy in Dubai, everybody else is running around from Pakistan and then maybe having to travel again to Dubai? We don't know who's going to host the final. At least one team knows where the semi-final will be played if they actually make it, but the rest of the teams don't really know what is happening.
Well, this is not something new, but it was decided long back. But this is such complication, isn't it? Like ideally you would want a tournament where before taking the field, where you're going to play your semi-finals and the final and so on. But here, because of the off-field issues, we have a situation where we are playing this Champions Trophy for the first time in a hybrid model. I don't know. This is going to be like a dress rehearsal of sorts for the future ICC events as well, right? We have the Women's 50-over World Cup coming later this year in India. So we don't know where Pakistan is going to play their games if as and when they qualify. And then a year later again, we have this T20 World Cup for men, which will be hosted by India and Sri Lanka. At least in that case, there could be like a clear picture of where Pakistan will play their games. But in this arrangement, it's all too feels little weird. And teams definitely will have some valid question marks ahead of them. Because the thing is, this hybrid model, let me put it this way, it was introduced during the last year's Asia Cup as well. But back then, you had at least one group of games happening there. And something was like, the later part was completely going to be held in Sri Lanka. But here, there is no such thing. You don't know things like Afghanistan, South Africa, Australia, England, they're all playing in Pakistan. And then they will have to figure out like different balance and squad combination when they come here to play in case you're coming here to play the semi-final. So it won't be easy on them, but it's going to be like very, very, very challenging because India, they're just playing in Dubai. They know the conditions really well. They know what it will take them for win. But imagine like in the case of say New Zealand or Afghanistan or Australia, the other teams, whoever is based out of Pakistan, they have picked a squad keeping in mind the conditions over there. Now suddenly you're told like, okay, now you're going to play one game here in Dubai where the conditions by the looks of it is going to be completely different to what they are finding at Lahore, Rawalpindi and Karachi. And they may not have the resources. So how are they going to go about it? How they are going to overcome these challenges? I think that's going to be the interesting facet during the business end of this tournament.
Vinayk, plus I think conditions in Dubai are going to be challenging for anybody, as we saw with India and with Bangladesh in a sense, where Bangladesh were suddenly reduced to, I think, 35 for 5 at one stage. And then there was that 6-wicket partnership that kind of gave them some sort of respectability. And then with India, we again saw that at some point they seemed to be cruising. At some point at the start, they lost, I think, 4 wickets very quickly. And then they needed Shubman to kind of salvage a rescue mission. But even for both teams, it seemed like you need more than one game at least to kind of figure out what is happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's the nature of the tournament. And yeah, like Venkat said, I think India's big advantage is, of course, knowing that, they are going to play all matches in the same conditions. And that's clearly, beneficial for their case. And they picked a squad that right now seems like the right one. There were questions over the 5 spinners included in the main squad with Varun replacing, Yashasvi at the very end, bowler coming in for a batter. That raised some eyebrows, but, they could easily play all spinners in the next match. And, that might not be the worst call possible, So they kind of have the balance. They know the conditions. And, I mean, if they play to their potential, it seems like things are lining up for India. You'll have to say that. Yeah, but the next one is going to be the big one. Sunday, India versus Pakistan. India have made a great start to the tournament. And like you've said, like Venkat has also written, kind of have the right resources to go the distance. And now Pakistan are coming in after a morale-sapping defeat in the opener where plenty of questions. I think they had more questions than answers after that first match. So, it's going to be a difficult challenge for Pakistan anyway, hosting the tournament but not having the conditions in their favor as they go into Dubai. That's the sort of tournament we are witnessing.
Yeah, it's slightly strange. But Venkat and maybe Vinayak also, what do we take away from whatever we saw with the top three yesterday? Shubman obviously had a 101 not out, but Rohit came, blasted his way out of whatever the blocks, got a 41 of 36, got out, done and dusted. But then we saw with Virat, there were challenges. Like he took 38 deliveries, I think, for his 22 runs. And at times it seemed like the ball was not coming onto the bat as nicely as he would have liked. Was that something that only he was facing? Is that a larger problem for all the batters that they're going to face at the pitch?
I wouldn't say it as a larger problem. I think it's like you have to give respect to the condition as well, because as you saw, even Shubman Gill scored a century, but there are times where he had to just sort of keep those big shots in his shelf and just rotate the strike and do such things, right? Because it is not a pitch where ballers coming on very nicely towards, as the game progressed under lights. It was slightly, both the teams expected Dew to have a role, but the Dew hasn't been around at all. So in that case, the pitch will get only slower through the game. So in that sense, when spinners are operating, you're going to have they're going to go at say 4 and over or 5 and over. It's not going to be a big scoring pitch at all. So yeah, but Kohli, it's too early to say whether he is struggling or what, because he did have a good outing against England, and coming here again, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be, you have to scrap it out. That's sort of a conditions over here, especially when you're batting first. You have to get a lot of your runs in singles and twos and even threes. So let's see, because it's not a very batting friendly pitch. But if you apply yourself, there is always runs for the taking, Gill showed. Gill was extraordinary, right? Given the conditions, he played some absolutely breathtaking shots of the pacers and spinners. He was really there's something special about how he played yesterday. So you need to have the balance. Watching it, I just found Gill was doing what Kohli had done in his prime years. He knew when to press on the accelerator, when to just slow down and just do it in singles and twos. And it was just extraordinary, right? I think Kohli, if he was sitting watching it from the dugout, he thought, okay, this fellow's actually doing what I was doing. So let me go back and do the same thing again, instead of just forcing the pace on the ball or constant search of intent.
Just one thing to add, I think what you mentioned about the topper, I think that's going to be a key aspect going forward as well, because the Dubai pitch really seems like a new ball pitch. It's probably going to be the easiest to score in the first 10 overs when the ball, two new balls coming hard, and once it gets softer, it seemed harder to bat, especially, given the pitches are already tired from all the matches that have been played so far. Nazir Hussain made this point before the game yesterday, saying, even though the pitch was fresh for the India-Bangladesh match, generally the square appears tired from the IL-20 and the Women's World Cup matches last year. There's been a lot of traffic. So batting first or batting second, I think the first 10 overs are going to be crucial. And that's where I think Rohit's approach is going to be interesting. If he decides to, he's been batting this way since the last World Cup. So he's probably going to continue to do that. And I think he might get value for runs. But at some point he'll have to convert these 40s into slightly bigger knocks. Maybe once the power play is done, once he has the early momentum, maybe he can also take a leaf out of Shubman Gill's book and play it around and then try and convert it. But he said he doesn't care about personal milestones and all that. But obviously, the more runs he scores is the better for India. So I think, the power play approach is probably going to remain the same from Rohit. And it's going to be also interesting for Pakistan because they've lost Fakhar Zaman, who could have given a similar start to them. So Sunday's match is going to be interesting. Does Imam come right back in? Straight into the 11 and open? What are Pakistan going to do? Because their batting seemed really concerning from the match against New Zealand. Whatever little they had only lowered down the order, and that might not be easily reproducible in Dubai.
Right. Before we go to Pakistan, I think, Vinayk, just maybe we should talk about the bowlers as well. And Shami had his 200th wicket yesterday, Fifer. Insane bowling. And we saw the video of him talking about his struggles, that for him to come back from injury, where he felt like a child basically learning how to walk again. From there to, playing, I think this is his second tournament back for India. He did kind of play in that England series, but this is his first real big ticket tournament. Just a little bit on what we saw from him there.
Yeah, Sami, an ICC tournament seems to be a love affair. It's quite crazy, his record in the ICC events. This was actually his first Champions Trophy match, which might come as a surprise to few. But with the across Champions Trophy and World Cup, he now has 60 wickets in ICC ODI events in 19 matches. That is just an incredible record. Strike rate of 15.5, which is the best in these events for minimum 15 wickets. If across those bowlers who have taken at least 15 wickets, he has now the best strike rate, which is, ridiculous. The kind of frequency with which he strikes in these matches. But Venkat, I just want to ask you, did he seem in full rhythm to you? Or is there a little more left in the tank, you think, for Shami?
I think there's a lot more left in his tank. I think for him and India's point of view, this was an outing where he got the confidence back, because from here on, I think he's only going to keep improving. We'll get to read it later today in our sports pages online. There's like more to why the selectors and the team management wanted to delay his comeback, because most of it was not just down to his fitness, but there is a lot to do with his rhythm as well, because unlike Bumrah or any other bowler, Shami is a very, very rhythmic bowler, and only when his rhythm in place, everything, be it his action, be it his speed, everything is dependent on that rhythm. So which is why they took a lot of time to get him back on the field. They were like patient. They could have hurried him, and they said like they could have pressed the panic button for the BGT series and send them down under, but they are like, no, he has to find that rhythm. Let's not like sort of hurry, because he's returning after it was not a career threatening injury per se, but it was very, very tough to get over it, right? It was very, very tough in the sense like he suffered further setbacks after ankle surgery. Then he had his knee was swollen. All of it added to the complications and it delayed it. But like Rohit said on eve of the game against Bangladesh, they wanted Shami to wear that India dress. So that's all they were like looking for. It's not as about wickets or anything. They wanted him wearing the jersey again. And then once he gets here, I think the rhythm will keep getting. It's like, I think he's like somebody who plays a piano or something. He'll keep getting better, I guess. Because we saw what he can do when he's in rhythm in the last World Cup, right? It was just magical. Like, I don't recall any great fast bowler having such a World Cup where like his just seam movement, each spell was like sort of lethal. And he hardly bowled any bad delivery. So it was such a good tournament. So from that to again for this ICC, a lot has gone, right? He has gone through a lot. And I mean, I think these conditions, would be like really like suit his style of bowling as well. I'm just waiting to see how he bowls under the lights over here.
Right. Just quickly to talk about Pakistan before we wrap this up. Vinayakk, Venkat, Pakistan, even though they're hosting their host, they didn't seem to have it easy at all. I mean, obviously they lost, but then, I mean, you would expect them to have some sort of familiarity with the pitch. And whatever, I mean, Rizwan said in his press conference also, it seemed like he was completely caught off guard by the pitch in a sense, plus the way New Zealand played them.
And they basically have to do it all over again in Dubai in new conditions. Yeah, I'm not sure things are looking rosy.
And with just one lone spinner.
And it's almost a do or die match. In fact, it might even be a do and die match.
Yeah, I mean, the fate is kind of not in their hands. So they have to win this and then beat Bangladesh and then hope New Zealand do a favor to them. Venkat, tough situation to be Pakistan, to be the host right now. How do you see the preview?
Definitely, Vinayakk. See, thing is, they have been waiting so long for such a tournament, right? Like, it's suddenly they lost Salman Aha during the South Africa tour. But I mean, we saw the 2023 World Cup to now. What has changed? Do they have any power hitters? Do they have that batsmen? They don't seem to play the cricket which is needed in 2025, especially limited overs. They are death of country had such batting talents in the past in the 90s when the ODI squad was probably the best in the world. But right now it's just below par, right? You look at, they are level below the top teams, definitely for sure, be it in terms of fielding, with batting, the intent. Bowling again was supposed to be their stronghold, but it's not, because also much of it has to do with them playing on batting friendly conditions. But you still expect them to do well in home conditions. But we saw it in the tri-series. There were fears, okay, probably New Zealand are gonna have owned them again. And that's what they did. They recovered from losing 3 early wickets to post 300 plus total. And then for their bowlers to do the job, I mean, Mitchell Santner, Bracewell and Glenn Phillips. I mean, there is something which was very interesting to see, right? Spinners, they were bowling wide off stump, asking them, yeah, try it, hit it. But no, the Pakistan batsmen, they did never. And I think whatever happened later on, obviously the margin of defeat seemed lower, but I think all they did was just damage control. The margin of defeat wouldn't really show how big the defeat was. And I'm just waiting to see how they turn it around over here against India, because the conditions are again totally different. They are familiar with these pitches in Dubai, but I still don't know whether they have the resources to beat this Indian side even without Bumrah. It's not going to be easy at all. And this tournament could well be their worst ever Champions Trophy tournament as well for them.
I think that's a good enough segue for us to wrap this up. We will be back obviously after every India game plus the semi-finals and the final. So don't miss that. And we obviously have a lot of coverage of the Champions Trophy on our website and in the newspaper. For now, this is me, Amit, saying goodbye, and on behalf of Vinayakk and Venkata, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back after next India game.
You were listening to Express Sports by the Indian Express. This week's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Ichha Sharma. If you like the show, do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. You can also recommend it to someone you think may like it, with a friend or in your family. This is the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcast or write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.